Hey guys, today we're going to explore something that sits quietly in the back of your mind, something you probably don't talk about, but you've definitely thought about. You're lying in bed, maybe the room's dark, maybe you're scrolling through your phone or staring at the ceiling, and suddenly, there it is. That quiet question. Is this thing I keep doing actually bad for me? And if it is, why can't I stop? Or maybe it's not bad at all, and I've just been taught to feel bad about it. You shift a little. The fan hums low in the background. Shadows stretch across the walls. That question doesn't come with a siren or a spotlight. It sneaks in like a whisper. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not alone in wondering. Most people don't walk around announcing their private rituals, but that doesn't mean they are not asking the same things. It's just quieter, like static between stations. And in that quiet space, you start to wonder if you're harming yourself in ways you don't fully understand. You've probably heard someone say, if you do that too much, you'll go blind, or it drains your energy, or you'll mess up your kidneys. Even if you never believed it all, those phrases stick. They settle in like old wallpaper, outdated, maybe, but still there. So here you are. Maybe you've done it today. Maybe you've stopped counting. Or maybe you've been trying to stop, and each time you slip, it feels heavier. There's a strange kind of silence around this topic. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it makes people uncomfortable. Even now, just listening to this might make you feel like you're doing something secret, something shameful. That feeling, that's where the real story begins. Because long before you were born, societies were already shaping how people should feel about their own bodies. You inherited those ideas, even if you didn't ask for them. And now, late at night, you find yourself caught between two voices. One that tells you it's natural, that everyone does it, and one that whispers it's wrong, disgusting, harmful. Those voices don't argue loudly, they clash in the silence. You begin to notice when it happens. Not just the act, but the lead-up. The boredom. The stress. The loneliness. Sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes it's craving, and sometimes it's just habit. A mechanical reach for comfort. A familiar sequence. Like brushing your teeth, but with more shame. And afterward, that's when the real weight lands. For some people, it's relief. For others, it's regret. You lie there, blinking at the ceiling, wondering if you've wasted something. Energy. Willpower. Time. Your sense of self. And the question rises again, is this hurting me? You've never talked to your doctor about it. Maybe you searched it once. Maybe you cleared your browser history. Maybe you've watched videos like this, quietly, without ever commenting or liking, because it feels too personal to engage. But tonight, you're listening. Not for judgment. Not for orders. Just for clarity. Understanding. Because this isn't a debate about whether it's good or bad. It's about something deeper. The hidden space between your body, your emotions, and the stories you've been told. You start to track your patterns, noticing when the urges hit. After work. When you're stressed. When you're lonely. When you're trying to sleep but your brain won't stop spiraling. You're not just reaching for pleasure. You're reaching for distraction, for relief, maybe even for love. But love doesn't always come with a hand. Sometimes it comes with a question: why do I need this so much? And what happens if I don't? The truth is, the body knows things the mind hasn't caught up to. It doesn't lie. It pulses with signals, with cravings. And when you ignore those long enough, they come out sideways through frustration, restlessness, shame, or even numbness. You start to wonder not just about the physical effects, but the emotional ones. Are you building a habit, or are you burying something deeper? Because when it becomes a routine, when the act is no longer about exploration or relief but about avoiding silence, then it starts to shape who you are quietly. And if no one ever talks about it, if no one ever says, "Hey, you're not weird for asking these things," then how do you know where the truth really lies? So tonight, you're not just wondering if masturbation is harmful. You're asking why this simple act carries so much noise around it. Why people whisper it like a secret curse, and why, even when you're alone in your room, it feels like someone's watching, judging. You're not broken for wondering. You're not weak for wanting answers. You're just human. Curious. A little tangled. Like everyone else. So let's stay with the question. Not to solve it in one go, but to walk it through. Piece by piece. Layer by layer. Memory by memory. You might not like every part of what we find, but you deserve to know. You deserve to unlearn the shame that wasn't yours to begin with. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to see that this question isn't about a habit. It's about how you feel when you're alone. What you believe about your own body. And how to find peace, not through guilt or denial, but through understanding. Because that's where healing always begins. You blink back into the past without meaning to. It's not even a conscious memory at first, just a flicker. A hushed conversation. A joke you didn't fully understand but laughed at anyway. A warning from a teacher, a relative, a religious leader. Somewhere, somehow, the idea was planted: masturbation is wrong. Dirty. Dangerous. You didn't question it then. You were too young, too eager to fit in, to obey. The grown-ups around you spoke with such certainty, and even if their words were vague, the tone was clear. There was something shameful about your own body. Something that needed to be hidden, suppressed. And those ideas, they didn't just vanish as you grew up. They evolved, morphing into subtle, unspoken codes. The way people react when the topic comes up. The way movies treat it as a punchline or a character flaw. The way even science, for a long time, didn't dare approach it with open hands and curious minds. You think about ancient times, how different civilizations treated sexuality and self-pleasure. In some cultures, it was seen as sacred. A way to connect with oneself and the universe. In others, it was taboo, punishable by exile, even death. There were myths, wild ones. That it caused madness. That it drained your essence. That it stole years from your life. One ancient belief claimed semen was a limited resource, a vital life force. Losing it too often meant spiritual and physical decay. Another culture believed masturbation would invite evil spirits, cloud your mind, weaken your soul. These weren't just stories. They shaped policies, health advice, even legal systems. You shake your head now, trying to laugh it off. But part of you still wonders how much of that stuck. How many of those whispers still echo inside you? Even today, many of the warnings you hear are dressed up versions of those same old fears, just with new labels. Energy drain, loss of drive, hormonal imbalance, kidney damage. Maybe someone told you it messes with your spine or your eyesight. Maybe you believed them once. Maybe you still do. But ask yourself, where did those claims come from? Were they based in science? Or in fear? Fear of desire? Fear of losing control? Fear of pleasure that doesn't require permission or partnership? You start to realize that for centuries, the control of sexuality, especially solo sexuality, has been a method of power. If you can convince someone to feel shame about their own body, you don't need to control them. They'll do it for you. You revisit the 1800s when doctors claimed masturbation caused insanity. That's not an exaggeration. People were institutionalized for it. Treated with ice baths, electric shocks, even surgery. There were anti-masturbation devices sold openly, metal cages, spiked rings, special gloves to protect children from their own instincts. All of it built on fear. Even Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, had mixed feelings. He saw masturbation as part of development, but also linked it to neurosis. He wasn't alone. Science, back then, was still tangled in religious and moral bias. And now, fast forward to today, and you still feel the tension. The world's more open, sure. There are sex educators, therapists, YouTubers, all trying to normalize it. But that doesn't erase the residue left behind. You might scroll through comments on a post, see debates. One person says it's natural. Another replies it's spiritual suicide. The contradiction pulls at you. Who's right? Can both be. Even the wellness world gets confusing. Some influencers tell you to retain your seed, claim it'll boost your energy, magnetize your presence, raise your vibrations. Others say there's no proof for any of that it's just recycled fear in trendy packaging. So you sit with it. Not the noise. Not the memes. The question, what do I actually believe? Not what was drilled into me. Not what I repeat because it feels safe. What do I feel when I listen to my own body? That's where it gets tricky. Because your body might crave it and your mind might shame you for it. It's not that the myths are all gone. They've just grown quieter, subtler. They show up in how you talk to yourself after. In how you flinch when someone brings it up. In how you hesitate to ask honest questions. But myths don't dissolve through silence. They unravel when you look them in the eye and ask, who told you that? And why did I believe it? Because belief is powerful. If you believe you're doing something wrong, even if it's not, you'll feel the weight of that guilt. And guilt is heavy. Heavier than the act itself. So tonight, as you lie there, let your mind trace back to the first time you felt that guilt. The first time you heard it was wrong. The first time you tried to stop and failed and felt broken. Let it rise, not to punish you, but to study it. Because the next time that whisper comes, that warning from somewhere old and unnamed, you'll have something stronger than fear. You'll have context. And context is how myths lose their grip. You shift your attention inward, wondering, beyond all the noise, what actually happens when you do it. Not the stories. Not the shame. just a biology. The mechanics of your body, the subtle dance of chemistry and sensation that unfolds without fanfare, in complete privacy. It starts before you even touch yourself. A thought. A trigger. Something subtle, a flash of memory, the curve of a stranger's smile, the rhythm of a song. That spark fires neurons in your brain's limbic system, your emotional core. Dopamine trickles in, your reward circuitry lights up like a street lamp at dusk. Your body isn't just reacting to pleasure. It's anticipating it. Your heart rate increases. Blood pressure shifts. The parasympathetic nervous system slowly yields to the sympathetic. Your body moves from rest to redness. You might not notice it, but everything sharpens. Breath deepens. Skin sensitivity rises. You're not just reacting, you're becoming ready. Touch begins to generate more feedback now. The skin in erogenous zones is rich in nerve endings. Thousands of tiny signals shoot toward the spinal cord, relaying up to your brain's somatosensory cortex. It's a loop. Each touch builds more anticipation, more arousal, more dopamine. Then comes a subtle shift. Oxytocin begins to release. The same hormone released during hugs, during childbirth, during sex. It's bonding chemistry. Your body doesn't differentiate between partner and self in that moment. It simply connects. To sensation. To comfort. To pleasure. And as you get closer to climax, other chemicals jump in: norepinephrine for alertness, endorphins, natural painkillers, prolactin, which explains that post-orgasmic crash. In men, testosterone may temporarily dip, then stabilize. In women, vaginal contractions can sync with muscular waves across the pelvis. It's not just one release, it's a full-body response. Orgasm is a neurological event. A flood of synchronized firing from your pelvic nerves to your brain. Some regions shut down, especially those tied to self-criticism and decision-making. That's why it feels like a moment of freedom. No overthinking. No doubt. Just sensation. And then it's over. Your body enters a refractory phase. For some, it's a sense of warmth and contentment. For others, it's fatigue. You breathe deeply, muscles loosen, eyelids get heavy. Your brain's activity drops into a resting rhythm, often resembling the early stages of sleep. That's no coincidence. Masturbation mimics a natural sedative. You start to notice patterns. Maybe you do it when you can't fall asleep. Maybe it helps with cramps, headaches, or tension. That's not random. Those effects are real. Masturbation, when not clouded by shame, can act as a kind of self-medication. But your mind pushes back. Okay, fine, it says. The body likes it. But is there a cost? What about losing energy? What about addiction? Kidney problems? Hormonal disruption? Let's take a breath and go deeper. First, the kidneys. You may have heard that masturbation damages them or causes them to overwork. But physiologically, there's no direct link between masturbation and kidney function. Your kidneys filter blood and regulate waste. Ejaculation doesn't pass through them or burden them. That myth likely stems from traditional Chinese medicine's idea of jing, or life essence, being stored in semen. While poetic, it's not rooted in modern anatomy. What about testosterone? Yes, there's a slight dip immediately after orgasm, especially in men, but it's brief. Levels return to normal within hours. Long-term testosterone levels aren't harmed by regular masturbation. In fact, some studies show no correlation between frequency and hormonal imbalances. And energy drain. That's subjective. If you're doing it compulsively, yes, it can feel exhausting. But physiologically, masturbation doesn't deplete you. Your body doesn't treat an orgasm as a loss. It's part of a cycle. And when done in balance, it can actually increase your mood and focus. Still, there's a nuance. If you use it to escape difficult emotions, that release might come with a hidden cost: disconnection. Not physical harm, but emotional numbness. A coping mechanism, not a crime, but still something to notice. You start to realize that the real damage isn't happening in your organs, it's happening in your relationship with the act itself. If you feel like you're hiding from yourself, then even a harmless act starts to feel like betrayal. But here's the truth your body's been trying to whisper all along: it knows how to regulate itself. It knows when enough is enough. When too much is too much. It's your mind, your culture, your inner critic that clouds the signals. So you start to listen more. Not to the warnings in your head, but to the rhythms in your chest. The tension in your jaw. The way your breath shortens when you're ashamed. And the way it softens when you let go of judgment. This isn't about telling you it's good or bad. It's about reminding you your body isn't your enemy. It's your ally. Your partner. And when you stop fighting it, the war inside quiets down. So the next time you wonder if you've hurt yourself, pause. Ask your body, not your guilt. It will tell you the truth. And the truth isn't whispered in fear. It hums quietly, with no shame at all. You wake up one morning and something feels off. Not in your body, but in your thoughts. A creeping fog of guilt clings to your skin, even though nothing's technically wrong. You didn't do anything bad. No one saw. No one knows. But the feeling sticks like a film over your mind. That's the weight of shame. Not logical. Not physical. Just present, quiet, persistent, and corrosive. You start to wonder why it's even there. Why does something so personal, so common, carry such emotional baggage? After all, you don't feel shame about scratching an itch or yawning. But this. Somehow, this is different. Or at least that's what you've been taught. Shame doesn't just arrive on its own. It's passed down. One hushed warning at a time. One awkward silence. One judgmental glance. The accumulation of all those micro-signals telling you, don't go there. That part of you is dirty. Private. Maybe even dangerous. But what happens when you internalize that message for too long? You begin to split. One version of you feels pleasure. Another version watches with suspicion. You start to perform emotional gymnastics, justifying, bargaining, denying. Not because the act itself is harmful, but because it feels wrong. Like you crossed a line, even though no line exists. This internal battle creates a loop. You masturbate, then regret it. You tell yourself you won't do it again. You resist. Eventually, you give in and the guilt floods back. It's not addiction. It's the cycle of shame. And it's exhausting. So where does the shame come from, really? Some of it is religious. Many faith traditions associate self-pleasure with impurity or loss of spiritual focus. They may not outright forbid it, but they frame it as a failure, a sign of weakness or disconnection from the divine. Over time, those messages seep into everyday language, sinful, unclean, temptation. Other times, it's cultural. In some societies, masturbation is barely spoken of, let alone understood. It becomes taboo not by law, but by silence. And in that silence, fear grows. Then there's your upbringing. Maybe your parents never talked about sex. Or maybe they talked about it only in terms of danger, pregnancy, disease, disgrace. If they caught you once, maybe they shamed you or punished you. Not because they were cruel, but because they were scared, too. Scared of what they didn't understand. Passing down feel like an heirloom. You don't blame them. But you also don't have to keep the cycle going. Because shame does more than hurt. It isolates. Makes you feel like the only one who struggles. Like you're broken for having a body that feels things. A mind that wonders. A heart that seeks relief. But here's the quiet truth, almost everyone does it. Across genders, ages, cultures. It's as common as dreaming. Some do it once a week. Others once a day. Some go months without thinking about it. Others turn to it for comfort, for sleep, for grounding. And yet, hardly anyone talks about it. That silence breeds secrecy. And secrecy breeds shame. So how do you break the cycle? Start by noticing the voice in your head. The one that says you're weak. You failed again. What's wrong with you? That voice isn't you. It's an echo. A memory. A mask worn by fear pretending to be truth. You don't have to fight it. Just observe it. Breathe through it. Let it speak and then let it pass. Then choose curiosity over judgment. Instead of asking, why am I like this? Ask, what do I need right now? Maybe you're bored. Maybe you're anxious. Maybe you're just seeking touch in a world that doesn't always give it freely. None of that makes you bad. It just makes you human. There's a difference between using something to escape and using it to explore. Between compulsion and connection. When you masturbate from a place of guilt, it reinforces shame. But when you do it from a place of care, of checking in, of honoring your body, it becomes something else entirely. Not a sin. Not a secret. A signal. That you are alive. That your body works. That pleasure is still accessible, even in solitude. Some people choose to abstain from masturbation. That's valid, too, if it comes from alignment, not shame. If it's a conscious choice, not a punishment. There's power in self-discipline, but only when it serves your growth, not your guilt. Others embrace it as part of their routine. A ritual. A way to distress, to sleep, to connect with themselves. Neither path is superior. The question isn't should I or shouldn't I? It's how do I feel before, during, and after? That's where your truth lives. Not in someone else's doctrine. Not in an influencer's opinion. Not in a dusty textbook or a viral tweet. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation for every other connection you'll ever have. If you build it on shame, you'll carry that shadow into intimacy. But if you build it on awareness, on kindness, on understanding, that's when you start to heal. So tonight, after the lights go out, after the room falls silent, notice your breath. The rise and fall. The warmth in your chest. The stillness in your limbs. You're not guilty. You're not broken. You're not a mistake. You're just a person with a body and a mind trying to navigate a confusing world. Trying to find comfort. Trying to feel okay. And you will. Even if it takes time. Even if the shame comes back. Even if you're still figuring it out. You're allowed to. You sit with the discomfort a little longer, not to punish yourself, but to understand it. Because there's something powerful about facing what you've avoided for so long. You begin to wonder, if masturbation is so common, so natural, why do so many people claim it's addictive? That word, addiction, carries weight. It conjures images of dependency, loss of control, spiral. But is that what's happening here? Or is it something else, maybe a pattern, a habit, a coping mechanism dressed up in the language of disorder? First, let's separate truth from fear. True addiction, by clinical standards, includes several key traits: compulsive engagement in a behavior despite negative consequences, inability to stop even when you want to, and distress or dysfunction in daily life. It's more than just frequency. It's about impact. So the real question isn't, do you do it a lot? It's, is it interfering with your life? You start to reflect. Are you skipping social plans? Missing deadlines? Feeling like the only way to soothe anxiety or stress is through masturbation? If so, maybe there's something underneath worth exploring. But what if you're just bored? Lonely? Tired? What if the world feels overwhelming and this act, this brief moment of control and release, gives you peace, even if only for a moment? That doesn't make you an addict. That makes you someone using a tool. Maybe not always the right one. Maybe not always in balance. But a tool nonetheless. Still, you know there are days when the urge comes not from curiosity or desire, but from numbness. Like something inside you is trying to feel anything at all. You don't even enjoy it sometimes, you just need the ritual. The routine. The guarantee of a dopamine hit. And that's where things get tricky. Because your brain loves dopamine. Not just during sex, but with food, video games, scrolling your feed. It's a survival mechanism. It rewards what feels good so you'll do it again. But here's the catch: when you rely too heavily on one source of pleasure, your brain adjusts. It gets less sensitive. It demands more. And the baseline, the place you once felt content, starts to fade. That's when you find yourself reaching for it again, even when you're not in the mood. Not because you're addicted in a clinical sense, but because the brain's reward system has been nudged out of balance. You can start to feel stuck. Not because you're broken, but because you've built a feedback loop and it's repeating too often, too unconsciously. Like reaching for your phone first thing in the morning, automatic, not intentional. So what do you do? First, you notice. Without panic. Without shame. You simply acknowledge that you're using this as more than just pleasure. It's become your go-to coping tool. Then, you get curious. What else soothes you? What else grounds you? Music, journaling, talking to a friend, moving your body. You don't have to stop masturbating cold turkey, but you can interrupt the pattern. Insert a pause, an auction. Sometimes it helps to set soft boundaries. Not rigid rules, those often backfire, but compassionate ones. Like, if I still feel the urge in 10 minutes, I'll allow it. But first, I'll breathe. Or take a walk. Or drink water. You're not denying yourself. You're retraining your brain, rebuilding resilience. And if the habit feels deeper than that, if it's tied to trauma, isolation, or long-term emotional patterns, it's okay to seek help. A therapist won't shame you. Many have heard this story before, more times than you might think. You don't have to navigate it alone. Because here's something beautiful: you are not defined by one behavior. You are not a porn addict or a chronic masturbator. You are a whole, complex being with needs, fears, hopes, and patterns that can be reshaped with care. It's not about quitting for good or hitting some arbitrary number. It's about learning when this act is helping you and when it's hurting you. When it brings comfort and when it covers discomfort. That difference matters. And the goal isn't purity. It's presence. Being present with yourself fully without flinching. Even when the feelings are murky. Even when you don't have all the answers. You begin to understand that what you're seeking through masturbation isn't just release. It's relief. From pressure. From loneliness. From overwhelm. From everything the world throws at you without warning. And in that realization, you find compassion. For yourself. For your journey. For the quiet, awkward, tender moments you've carried alone for years. There's nothing wrong with finding comfort in your own body. There's only danger in forgetting why you're reaching for it. And if you ever feel like you've gone too far, like the habit has slipped beyond your control, remember, you can return. You can reset. Not with punishment, but with presence. Each moment is a new beginning. Each urge is a signal, not of failure, but of need. And you, just by listening, are already healing. You glance at the clock. It's late. The room is quiet, and yet your thoughts stir louder than ever. It's in these quiet hours, when distractions fall away, that your inner world rises to the surface. You feel the familiar tension again, the pull between curiosity and control, between relief and restraint. This moment, this exact one, is when a lot of people wonder, is my body trying to tell me something? And maybe it is. Your body is incredibly smart. More than you give it credit for. It doesn't speak in words, but it speaks. Through fatigue, appetite, tension, and yes, even arousal. But it's easy to misunderstand its messages when you're taught to fear them. You begin to notice patterns. You reach for masturbation when you're stressed. When you're bored. When you're lonely. Not always for pleasure, but for something, even if you don't have a word for it yet. So you pause and ask yourself, not with judgment, but with openness, what do I really need right now? This is the start of listening to your body as a whole, not just the parts society tells you to ignore or hide. You begin to understand that sexual urges don't always point to a desire for sex. Sometimes they signal a craving for connection, for closeness, for presence. You might be seeking physical comfort when what you truly need is emotional safety. And that's okay. Because the two are more connected than you think. You remember a time when you were overwhelmed, drowning in tasks and expectations, and you took a moment to pleasure yourself, not for escape, but as an anchor. Your breath slowed. Your shoulders dropped. For a brief window, you returned to your body. That's not shameful. That's regulation. Emotional, physiological, psychological. In fact, there's science behind it. Masturbation releases dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins, neurochemicals that reduce stress and improve mood. It lowers cortisol. It helps some people sleep. It can even relieve menstrual cramps or headaches. It's not a miracle cure, but it's not just about lust either. Sometimes it's about healing. And when you start to view it through that lens, something shifts. You're no longer stuck in the binary of good versus bad. You're not measuring yourself against outdated rules. You're paying attention. You may start to explore what kinds of touch feel good, not just physically, but emotionally. You begin to notice what fantasies stir not just your body, but your heart. Maybe it's intimacy. Maybe it's being seen. Maybe it's safety. These are clues, not sins. What if you followed those clues? What if masturbation became a doorway to better understand your desires, not just sexual, but relational, creative, spiritual? The urge is real, but it doesn't have to end at the surface. It can start a conversation with yourself. Why do I feel the need to escape right now? What am I trying to numb? What would pleasure look like if I wasn't afraid of it? And yes, there will still be moments when it feels mechanical. When you go through the motions without meaning. That's part of the journey, too. You're not a machine. You're human. You're learning. Each moment of awareness builds the next one. You start to notice what changes when you bring intention to the act. When you light a candle. When you take your time. When you breathe deeper. When you stop rushing to the end. It doesn't have to be romantic or dramatic. Just present. You might laugh. You might cry. You might feel nothing. That's part of it, too. Because the body stores memories, experiences, emotions. Touch can unlock them softly, unexpectedly. Masturbation can become a mirror. Not always glamorous. Sometimes confusing. But honest. And honesty leads to healing. It's not about achieving perfect balance overnight. It's not about counting days or wins or slips. It's about learning to hear yourself clearly, kindly. You begin to understand that your urges don't control you, but they do inform you. They tell you where the hunger is, where the emptiness hides, where the love still needs to go. And with that knowledge, you get to choose. Not from guilt, not from fear, but from care. Some nights you'll choose release. Other nights you'll hold space for the feeling and do something else, write, walk, talk, breathe. Both choices are valid when they come from you. That's the shift from reflex to relationship. From a body that feels separate from you to a body that feels like you. You may never fully silence the noise around what's right or wrong, but you can make your own volume louder, more rooted, more real. You return to your breath, slow, measured, soft. Your hands rest beside you, not in shame, not in urgency, just present. The craving may still exist, but now it is context. It is voice. It is your attention. And in that stillness, you remember. Your body is not the enemy. Your pleasure is not the problem. Your awareness is the way forward. You wake up the next morning and there's a lingering question that didn't fully fade overnight. It tugs at your thoughts as you sip your coffee, scroll through messages, prepare for the day ahead. What if this is messing with my energy? It's not a strange question. In fact, across cultures and centuries, people have believed that masturbation, or even sexual release in general, drains a vital essence. Ancient philosophies gave it names. The Chinese called it Jing, the vital fluid. Indian yogic teachings refer to it as Oyas, a sacred energy linked to life force and clarity. And even if you don't follow those traditions, you've probably felt it. That odd post-release fog, the drop in energy, the sudden sleepiness or even irritability, the momentary sense of flatness. Is that real? Yes and no. Here's what's actually happening. During orgasm, your brain releases a powerful cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. It's a rush, a high. But shortly afterward, especially in those who ejaculate, there's a natural cool-down period. Your prolactin levels spike, suppressing sexual arousal and encouraging rest. It's not that you've lost something magical. It's that your body, having just experienced a peak, naturally seeks recovery. It's like the pause after a sprint. Your nervous system needs to recalibrate. But energy is more than biology. It's also belief. How you think about your body affects how you feel in your body. If you've been told that masturbation is wasteful, draining, or shameful, your mind may respond accordingly, even creating psychosomatic effects. You might feel weaker not because you are, but because your brain has been taught to expect that response. This is where mindset matters. You begin to question not just the act, but your assumptions around it. What if it's not about loss at all? What if it's about exchange? You give energy. You receive release. You cycle through tension and relief. And depending on your intention, the aftermath can feel different. A hurried, guilt-driven session might leave you feeling depleted, foggy, even agitated. But a slow, intentional moment, one rooted in curiosity or affection, can have a completely different energetic signature. You might feel calmer, centered, connected, whole. So maybe the question isn't, does it drain your energy? Maybe it's, how are you channeling your energy? Because energy, like water, takes the shape of its container. Some people choose to abstain not out of fear, but out of focus. Athletes before competition. Monks during training. Creators during deep work seasons. Not because masturbation is evil, but because they want to conserve every drop of drive, clarity, ambition. Others integrate it into their rhythm, using pleasure as a release valve, a grounding tool, even a reset. There's no universal rule. There's only alignment with your own needs, goals, and cycles. You begin to notice how your own rhythm works. Maybe some days, release helps you start the day clear-headed. Other days, it leaves you groggy or unmotivated. So you test. You adjust. You play with timing, frequency, intention. You're not chasing perfection. You're mapping you. And somewhere along that journey, the idea of energy becomes less mystical and more intuitive. Less dogma, more feedback. You trust your body more. You listen better. On days when you feel low, you ask not what did I waste, but what do I need to restore? Rest, nourishment, movement, connection. Because the truth is, energy isn't just about what you do. It's about how you live. sleep habits, emotional health, nutrition, boundaries, environment. Masturbation doesn't exist in a vacuum. If everything else is out of balance, no wonder it feels draining. But if you tend to your whole ecosystem, the act may not be a drain at all. It might become a part of your natural rhythm, like eating, stretching, laughing. You start to reclaim it, not as a guilty indulgence, but as a conscious choice. And choice is powerful, because when you choose, you take back control. You aren't swayed by superstition or shame. You know your patterns. You trust your pace. You observe your body like a friend, not a battlefield. And sure, some people will still preach about retaining semen for superpowers or preserving life force for spiritual ascension. Maybe that works for them. Maybe it doesn't. But you don't need to copy anyone's doctrine. You just need to understand your own design. When you listen closely, your body will tell you. When something depletes you, it whispers. When something restores you, it hums. And that whisper, that hum, that's the language of energy. It may not come with a textbook or a ritual, but it's there. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. And in that stillness, you'll find something deeper than stamina. You'll find sovereignty. Not because you've sworn off pleasure, but because you've learned to hold it wisely. There's a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when you begin to question not just what you do, but why. It's subtle. It creeps in during an idle scroll, a daydream, or a glance in the mirror. A simple but weighty question, am I addicted to this? It's not a loud accusation. More like a whisper behind your ribs. One that doesn't go away just because you ignore it. So, let's pause here and breathe into the discomfort. Addiction is a heavy word. It's shaped by stigma and shadow. It paints a picture of someone lost, desperate, compulsive. But in truth, not every repeated habit is an addiction. Not every craving is a crisis. Still, you wonder, how do I know if this is a problem? You start by noticing your relationship with control. Do you feel like you can stop if you want to? Or do you tell yourself you'll stop, but then don't? You examine how often you turn to masturbation, not just for pleasure, but for distraction, for escape, for regulation. And those aren't inherently wrong. We all reach for something when we are overwhelmed. Some choose food. Others a phone screen. Some choose sex or solo touch. What matters is pattern, not just frequency, but dependency. So you look deeper. Are there times when you feel anxious and your first instinct is to numb it with stimulation? When you feel lonely and seek a quick rush instead of reaching out? When you feel bored and dive into fantasy rather than creativity? Again, none of these make you broken. They make you human. But they also hold a mirror up to your coping systems. True addiction isn't just about repetition. It's about compulsion despite harm. If you're noticing negative impacts on sleep, focus, self-worth, relationships, and yet you continue without pause, that's worth exploring. But it's not about shame. It's about clarity. You don't need to punish yourself into discipline. You just need to understand your cycle. There are signs if you're willing to look. A growing tolerance needing more stimulation to feel the same effect. Shorter gaps between urges. A sense of restlessness, irritability, or emptiness when you don't give in. You might notice how your triggers show up. Maybe it's a certain time of day, a mood, a memory, a certain kind of video or image. Awareness is the first compass. Not judgment, not restriction. So you try something different. You experiment. Not with quitting cold turkey or setting impossible rules, but with pausing. Just long enough to ask, what's really underneath this? You journal. You go for a walk. You reach out to a friend. You try something unfamiliar. And slowly, the act begins to lose its power as a default setting. You create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, something remarkable grows. Choice. Some people use tools, apps that help track their patterns, therapy that unearths emotional roots, mindfulness practices that restore a sense of control. These aren't cures. They are invitations. They remind you that you are not at the mercy of your habits. You are not weak for struggling. You are not shameful for relapsing. You are not broken because you haven't fixed it yet. You are aware, and that awareness is already healing you. Because the more you understand the mechanisms behind your behavior, the less power they hold over you. You see how dopamine works, how novelty, unpredictability, and reward loops can hijack your brain. You begin to notice how stress shrinks your prefrontal cortex's ability to make rational decisions. You begin to understand that your habits aren't moral failures, they are responses to unmet needs. And so you ask, what need is going unmet? Love, recognition, autonomy, rest. You stop fighting the symptom and start addressing the source. And something loosens inside you. The cravings don't vanish overnight, but they become less intimidating. You stop fearing them. You greet them with curiosity. You remind yourself that you are more than your urges, more than your patterns, more than your worst day. And that's the quiet truth no one talks about. Addiction isn't just about excess, it's about absence of connection, of meaning, of safety. So healing won't come from just quitting. It'll come from replacing with what truly nourishes you. You rediscover creativity, movement, spirituality, friendship, stillness. And yes, you might still choose to masturbate, but the choice will feel different, more spacious, less desperate. That's the difference between compulsion and consent. It's not about never feeling the urge. It's about knowing you can pause, breathe, and listen first. And in that pause, you find power. Real, grounded power. Not because you're perfect, but because you're present. And that, more than anything, is what sets you free. You realize something important as you move through your days. Masturbation is not just a private act but a reflection of how you relate to yourself overall. It's a conversation, a dance between your body, your mind, and your emotions. When that relationship is strained or disconnected, masturbation can feel mechanical, compulsive, or hollow. But when it's rooted in self-knowledge and care, it can become a form of self-love. You start noticing your body's messages more clearly. You learn to distinguish between hunger, thirst, tiredness, boredom, loneliness, and genuine sexual desire. Each craving is different, each invitation distinct. You stop lumping all sensations together under the label of need to masturbate and begin to parse the nuances. That's when things shift. You recognize that sometimes your body craves intimacy without words, soft touch, warmth, human presence. You begin to create small rituals that honor that craving: a warm bath, a gentle stretch, a mindful breath. These rituals don't replace masturbation, but enrich your experience of it. You may find that your fantasies evolve, too. They become less about escapism and more about connection, imaginings that include tenderness, respect, and even playfulness. You notice how your imagination can be a powerful tool, not just for arousal but for healing. You start asking yourself, what do I want to feel? Safe, desired, seen, accepted. And you realize that masturbation can be a safe space to explore those feelings without judgment. This exploration also helps you notice how shame might still lurk beneath the surface. Maybe it's the echoes of childhood lessons or cultural messages that told you pleasure was dirty or selfish. You sit with those feelings without trying to push them away. You breathe into them, understanding that shame is a story you were told, not a truth you have to live. You might find it helpful to speak affirmations aloud or write them down. Simple truths like "I deserve pleasure" or "my body is good" start to soften the hard edges of self-criticism. This healing isn't linear. Some days are easier. Others, old fears and doubts return. But you meet them with compassion rather than battle. You also notice how your emotional life intertwines with your physical pleasure. When you're feeling joyful, connected, or confident, your experiences become richer and more fulfilling. When you're stressed or withdrawn, pleasure can feel distant or forced. This awareness nudges you to care for your emotional landscape as much as your physical one. Maybe you start journaling, talking to friends, or seeking therapy to unpack deeper wounds. Masturbation becomes part of a larger self-care practice, not a secret or a fix. In this light, masturbation is not an escape but a pathway. A way to feel grounded in your body, to embrace your full humanity, and to reconnect with your capacity for joy. You begin to see yourself differently. Not as someone who has to hide or feel guilty, but as a person worthy of pleasure, healing, and wholeness. And that's a powerful transformation. Because when you embrace your body fully, with all its needs and desires, you reclaim your freedom. You step out of shame's shadow and into your own light. You feel more present, more alive. And that presence ripples outward, touching every part of your life. You carry it into your relationships, your work, your creativity. You learn that pleasure is not a detour from your path, it is your path. A path of acceptance, awareness, and love. And in walking it, you become more yourself than ever before. As your understanding deepens, you encounter another subtle but profound truth. Masturbation and sexual pleasure don't exist in isolation. They are deeply connected to your overall well-being, including your mental health. It's common to notice that when anxiety or depression flare up, your sexual desire dims or becomes complicated. Or, sometimes, the opposite happens. You might use masturbation as a way to soothe emotional pain, a temporary escape from racing thoughts or feelings of loneliness. Both responses are valid. Both reveal how intertwined your mind and body really are. You might start to pay attention to the way your moods influence your sexual energy. When your anxiety rises, does your body tighten? Do your thoughts crowd in, making it harder to focus on sensation? Do you feel distant from your own pleasure? If so, you're not alone. Many people experience these fluctuations. It's part of being human. You begin experimenting with ways to support your mental health that, in turn, nourish your sexual health. Mindfulness practices, for example, become an essential tool. By learning to bring your attention gently back to the present moment, you reduce the power of anxious or depressive spirals. You find that when your mind calms, your body opens more readily to pleasure. Breathing exercises become your anchor, especially when you feel overwhelmed. A slow, deep breath signals safety to your nervous system, inviting relaxation and connection. You might also explore how movement helps, whether it's yoga, walking, or dancing. Movement helps release tension, improve mood, and foster a positive relationship with your body. You start seeing masturbation as part of a holistic practice of self-care, not a separate fix. Talking openly about these experiences, even if only with yourself at first, breaks down walls of isolation. You realize that many others share your struggles and that your desire for pleasure doesn't contradict your mental health challenges. In fact, embracing your sexuality can be a powerful act of healing. You become curious about the stories you tell yourself regarding pleasure and mental wellness. Maybe you've internalized messages that say feeling desire is frivolous or selfish when you're struggling. You begin to rewrite those narratives with kindness. With time, you notice that allowing yourself pleasure doesn't distract you from your challenges, it strengthens your resilience. It reminds you that joy and pain can coexist. And you become more patient with your process. You stop demanding perfection from yourself, allowing space for highs and lows. You discover that your body remembers pleasure even when your mind forgets. That memory becomes a source of comfort and hope. Masturbation, then, is not just about physical release. It's a dialogue with your whole self, body, mind, and emotions. A way to reclaim your sense of agency and tenderness, even in difficult times. You start to trust that pleasure can be a gentle guide back to yourself. And in that trust, you find a deeper kind of freedom, one that supports your mental and emotional health while honoring your unique rhythm. There's an often overlooked layer to this conversation, the social and cultural context shaping your experience with masturbation. From early childhood, you've absorbed messages, spoken and unspoken, about sex, pleasure, and the body. Some cultures celebrate sexuality openly, weaving it into life's fabric with humor, reverence, or curiosity. Others cloak it in silence, shame, or fear. These cultural scripts silently influence your beliefs, fears, and behaviors around masturbation. You might find that some of your discomfort or confusion isn't just personal, it's inherited. A legacy of taboo, misinformation, or judgment. This realization can be freeing. It means you don't have to carry those old stories uncritically. You can question them, unpack them, choose which to keep and which to let go. For example, if you grew up hearing that masturbation is dirty or selfish, you begin to see how those messages don't align with your actual experiences. They are not your truth, they are someone else's narrative imposed on you. You explore alternative perspectives. Scientific research shows that masturbation is a natural, common, and healthy expression of human sexuality. It supports physical health, emotional balance, and stress relief. You encounter voices that normalize pleasure and encourage self-compassion. You might read or listen to experts who frame masturbation as a way to deepen body awareness and emotional connection. You start to challenge the stigma you've internalized. That doesn't mean the fear or shame disappears overnight. It means you're developing the tools to navigate those feelings with curiosity instead of judgment. Community plays a crucial role here. When you connect with others who share their honest stories, you realize you're not alone in your struggles or questions. Sometimes, just hearing someone say, "Me too," is a balm. You might join online forums, listen to podcasts, or participate in workshops focused on sexuality and wellness. These spaces offer validation and education, helping dismantle isolation. You also notice how cultural expectations shape gendered experiences of masturbation. Men and women, for example, often face different pressures and taboos around pleasure. These differences affect how openly you talk about it, how comfortable you feel, and even how you experience orgasm. Understanding this complexity invites empathy for yourself and others. You see that your journey is not just about personal healing, it's part of a larger social movement towards sexual liberation and health. This broader perspective encourages you to advocate for yourself and others. To speak openly, challenge harmful norms, and foster environments where pleasure is respected, not shamed. In reclaiming your narrative, you contribute to a collective shift. One that honors pleasure as essential to well-being and human connection. And as you embrace this vision, your relationship with masturbation transforms. It becomes less about secrecy or guilt and more about authenticity and empowerment. You realize that healing isn't just private. It's political. It's a statement: I deserve pleasure. I deserve to be seen. I deserve to be whole. And in that declaration, you find courage. A courage that lights the way forward, not just for yourself, but for others walking similar paths. As you continue exploring, you start to notice how technology shapes your experience with masturbation in profound ways. The digital age has transformed not only how people masturbate, but what they imagine and expect from pleasure. Pornography, apps, social media, these platforms flood you with images, stories, and fantasies designed to captivate your attention and trigger arousal. They can feel like an endless buffet of novelty, each click offering a new rush. But this abundance can also create a paradox. You might feel overstimulated, yet simultaneously bored or dissatisfied. The brain's reward system craves novelty, but too much stimulation can desensitize you, making it harder to enjoy simpler or slower experiences. This dopamine treadmill can distort your sense of pleasure, leading you to chase ever more intense or specific stimuli. You might catch yourself scrolling through videos, images, or fantasies longer than you intend, wondering why the satisfaction feels fleeting. Technology also shapes the stories you tell yourself about what's normal or desirable. Porn often depicts exaggerated scenarios that don't reflect everyday intimacy or consent, which can warp expectations and create pressure. Recognizing this, you begin to question your consumption habits. You try mindful approaches, setting limits on screen time, choosing content that feels respectful and realistic, and balancing digital stimulation with real-world connection. You might experiment with dopamine fasting, periods when you avoid all digital sexual content, allowing your brain's reward pathways to reset. These breaks can help you reconnect with your body's natural rhythms and sensations. Technology isn't inherently bad. It offers education, connection, and community. But awareness is key. You learn to use tech as a tool, not a master. You also explore alternatives like guided meditation or audio erotica that focus on imagination and sensation rather than visuals. These can cultivate a richer, more embodied experience of pleasure. You notice how this mindful use of technology enhances your capacity to be present during masturbation. Instead of a passive consumer, you become an active participant in your own pleasure. This shift supports healthier sexual development and greater self-compassion. You also recognize the importance of privacy and boundaries in the digital age. Sharing or consuming sexual content carries risks, so you become more intentional about what you expose yourself to and what you share. Through this exploration, you reclaim autonomy over your digital sexual landscape. You decide what feels nourishing and what doesn't. And in doing so, you cultivate a balanced relationship between technology, pleasure, and self-care. This balance nurtures resilience against overstimulation and helps you maintain a grounded, authentic connection to your sexuality, one that honors your body, your mind, and your values. It's a modern challenge, but also an opportunity. Because mastering this balance means you can enjoy pleasure without losing yourself in distraction. And that, in itself, is a gift. You start to realize that masturbation, at its core, is a deeply personal form of exploration, not only of your body but of your emotional landscape and even your identity. This practice can reveal layers of yourself that often remain hidden in daily life, tucked beneath social masks and roles. As you tune in more closely, you might discover new sensations, preferences, and boundaries. You learn what feels good, what feels neutral, and what feels uncomfortable or unwelcome. This self-awareness is empowering. It gives you a vocabulary to communicate your needs more clearly, both to yourself and to others. You also begin to notice how your sexuality may shift over time. What excites or soothes you at one stage of life may evolve with your experiences, relationships, and personal growth. This fluidity is natural and healthy, yet many people feel pressure to fit into fixed categories or scripts. Masturbation becomes a way to honor that fluidity, a private space where you can experiment without judgment or consequence. It's a laboratory for self-discovery. Alongside this, you might start to reflect on how your sexual expression intersects with your broader identity, your gender, your cultural background, your values, and your beliefs. These intersections shape your desires and your comfort levels. For example, if you identify as LGBTQ+, masturbation can be a crucial step in understanding and embracing your orientation. It allows you to explore desires that may not have been validated or recognized elsewhere. If you come from a conservative or religious background, you might wrestle with internalized beliefs about purity, sin, or morality. Masturbation can challenge those narratives and open the door to reconciling faith and pleasure. This process of integration is deeply healing. It helps dissolve internal conflicts and fosters a sense of wholeness. You might find that the act of masturbation itself becomes more meaningful. It's not just about release, it's about honoring your truth, your pleasure, and your right to exist fully. This journey can inspire creativity and courage. You begin to advocate for your needs, set clearer boundaries, and foster healthier, intimate relationships. You also gain empathy for others, recognizing that everyone's path to sexual self-understanding is unique and complex. Through this lens, masturbation is part of a larger quest to live authentically and with integrity. It's a practice that nurtures resilience, confidence, and compassion. And ultimately, it invites you to celebrate the richness of your humanity. Your sexuality is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be embraced. In this embrace, you find freedom. A freedom that transcends shame, fear, and silence. And opens the door to a life lived fully, sensually, mindfully, and beautifully. As you weave together all these threads, the physical, emotional, cultural, and technological, you begin to see masturbation not just as an isolated act but as part of your broader self-care ecosystem. It's one of many ways you nurture your body and mind, along with sleep, nutrition, exercise, and social connection. You recognize that pleasure is not a luxury or a reward but a fundamental human need. It grounds you in the present moment, offering relief from stress and fostering resilience. pleasure becomes a tool for restoration. This realization encourages you to cultivate rituals around masturbation that feel intentional and sacred rather than rushed or secretive. You create spaces where you can relax and fully inhabit your body, lighting candles, playing soft music, or simply closing your eyes and breathing deeply. You honor your own rhythms, noticing when you feel drawn to explore and when you prefer rest or stillness. This attunement to your body's signals helps prevent compulsive or guilt-driven behavior. In doing so, you reclaim agency over your pleasure and your time. You also recognize the power of consent in this practice, not just with partners but with yourself. You learn to listen deeply and respect your boundaries, even as they shift. Sometimes you might feel curious and adventurous, other times gentle and reserved. This respect transforms masturbation from a mechanical routine into a meaningful act of self-love. It nurtures your ability to give and receive care more fully in all relationships. You also become mindful of how your environment affects your experience. A cluttered, noisy, or stressful setting can block your ability to relax and enjoy. So you experiment with creating a calming atmosphere that supports your practice, whether that means dimming lights, finding quiet moments, or using textures and scents that soothe you. Over time, you notice how these rituals ripple outward. The patience, kindness, and attentiveness you cultivate during masturbation inform how you treat yourself and others throughout the day. This ripple effect highlights the profound interconnectedness of pleasure, health, and happiness. You understand that by caring for yourself with intention, you contribute to a more compassionate and joyful world. Masturbation, then, becomes a cornerstone of holistic wellness, a celebration of life's fullness rather than a guilty pleasure. This perspective shifts your mindset from scarcity to abundance, from judgment to acceptance. And it invites you to continue exploring, learning, and growing without shame or fear. You step into your pleasure not as a secret but as a vital, life-affirming force. A force that reminds you you are worthy, you are whole, and you are enough. In the quiet moments before sleep, as your body settles and your mind begins to drift, you might find yourself reflecting on the journey you've taken with masturbation and pleasure. What once may have been a source of confusion, guilt, or secrecy has transformed into a space of healing and self-acceptance. You've discovered that pleasure is not something to be feared or hidden but an essential part of your humanity, a language through which you communicate with yourself. As you cultivate this relationship, you notice how it softens your edges, deepens your empathy, and opens your heart. You come to see that pleasure, in all its forms, is a kind of nourishment, one that supports your emotional resilience, creativity, and connection to others. Masturbation becomes not merely an act but a ritual of presence. A way to slow down and honor the rhythms of your body. This gentle attention teaches you patience and kindness toward yourself, qualities that echo through every aspect of your life. You learn to listen to the subtle whispers of your desires, honoring their ebb and flow without judgment or pressure. In doing so, you nurture a profound sense of trust in yourself and your body's wisdom. This trust extends beyond your solo moments. It informs your relationships, helping you set boundaries and communicate your needs with clarity and confidence. You begin to embrace intimacy as a dance of mutual respect and pleasure rather than obligation or performance. And as you carry this openness forward, you feel a deepening connection, not only to your own body but to the shared human experience of longing and fulfillment. This journey has its challenges and uncertainties, but it is also rich with discovery and growth. Remember that healing is not a straight path. There will be times of doubt and discomfort, but these moments are part of the process. Be gentle with yourself. Allow space for both light and shadow. As you rest tonight, know that your pleasure is a sacred thread weaving you closer to wholeness. It is a quiet celebration of life itself. So, let your body relax, your mind ease, and your heart open. You are worthy of this peace. You are deserving of this joy. And as sleep embraces you, carry this truth softly in your soul. Rest well, knowing you are enough exactly as you are. The night deepens and your breathing slows. Each inhale and exhale a gentle tide lapping at the shores of your consciousness. Imagine your body sinking into soft blankets, the quiet hum of the world fading into a peaceful background. Your muscles release tension, your mind unwinds the stories of the day, and your heart settles into a calm rhythm. Pleasure is no longer something distant or elusive. It is here, a warm presence nestled inside you. It flows through your veins like a quiet river, steady and sure. You hold this feeling tenderly, like a secret gift you give yourself, wrapped in kindness and acceptance. Allow yourself to drift without urgency, knowing that in this stillness, healing happens. The shadows that once whispered doubt soften, replaced by a gentle light of understanding. Your body remembers what it means to feel safe, to be loved by you in this very moment. There is no need to fix or change anything. You are enough. Whole. Complete. Feel the softness of your skin, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the steady pulse of life moving through you. This is your sanctuary, your sacred space where pleasure and peace coexist. As sleep carries you deeper, carry with you the knowledge that you are seen, you are valued, and you are free. Good night, dear one. May your dreams be sweet and your rest restorative.